Hey everyone, this is just a series of videos, one of a few, focused on people that want to get into retro gaming, retro streaming, because I've heard there are a few people out there that aren't quite sure how to do that. So in this bit, I wanted to first cover emulators as a piece of that. They're kind of the cheapest and easiest way to get into retro gaming or streaming without the need of having any expensive or somewhat fancy hardware or needing to have a console otherwise and having a game library already set there in front of you. You've got a couple options. One I'm going to cover in the last bit of this particular part, but mostly you've got like standalone emulators. So for people that maybe are like, okay, the Game Boy, I want to play some of those, you've got a number of options of emulators that you could use. One of the more popular emulators that people use is VisualBoyAdvance. A lot of people now don't recommend that anymore because it's fairly inaccurate compared to many of the better options that there are now. One of those options happens to be mGBA. So when you bring it up, it looks kind of like this. It does let you do a number of cool things. So it can let you run ROM hacks. But if you have a ROM that you particularly want to play, but you don't know how to apply a patch, you can actually go to this part and load patch, and it'll let you find that patch file and load it right onto over top of the ROM and let you play it that way. And that's a pretty cool feature. It's actually got a number of other features with it too that are for specific games, and it's still continuously in development and with bunch of other features. So that's kind of the Game Boy Advance one I would recommend. It is cross-platform. I'll leave links to all these. The next one that you might look at is gambatte. So this one is kind of like in a state of development, but not at the same time. The base branch itself is kind of like stagnant as far as I can tell, but this Pokemon speedrunning community has made a build that for Pokemon that they use, and it's pretty simple, but it's more accurate than you'll find VisualBoyAdvance, specifically for Game Boy Color. See if I pull up this one. So it kind of gives you the screen that you're used to, and it lets you, if you're playing a Game Boy game, it lets you do that color thing. But yeah, that's kind of gambatte. It's pretty simple. You can set up speed and things like that on it, which is one thing people look for. A lot of people enjoy is having a speed up button so that you can just like zoom through everything. I don't have the sound on it right now, so the next one people use, the next one on my list is called Sameboy. So this one, when running tests with it, it has shown to be the most accurate Game Boy emulator for Game Boy Color, Game Boy, that kind of thing. And so it kind of works in the same way as, say, what is it? mGBA, which I'll cover in a second. It's set in Game Boy mode. If I go to my folder here, let me see. Okay, there we go. And it should come up. Okay, there it is. Has a number of cool options. It's more fleshed out for the Mac, so for Mac users, that's a good option. Okay. So the next one, it has a slowdown button. I didn't know that. Anyway, if we go to, I want to say I have it in here. Yep. Okay. So BGB is one that a lot of ROM hackers use on whatever. It runs pretty well in Wine for us Linux people, but it's Windows for Windows. It has a number of advanced options and a fully fleshed debugger that ROM hackers use to kind of like check different things when they're like programming or messing with their ROMs. It looks pretty simple if it'll come up here in a second. Come on, buddy. There it is. Okay. So, much like I did with Sameboy, you can drag and drop your ROM on it, or you can just like load a ROM up by right-clicking it. Let's not mess with that one. We will go with this one. Okay. So all of the options are kind of here in the right-click menu, so you can load a bunch of things and stuff like that. So getting into that will be interesting for some people that aren't used to it. It does have support cheats, which many emulators will. You can edit the memory live. You go into options. You've got a ton of options. You have to, what is it? Where is it? Configure extra buttons. If you check that on, it'll let you set up like the speed up button once you hit configure keyboard or configure game controller. So you can like get things going that way. Okay. And then, yeah, I have it configured with speed up already. So it'll let you do that. And that's specifically for Windows. So, let's see, 5. So another one that I use for like those people that it's like, well, I played the Super Nintendo. One of your options as a standalone emulator is SNES 9X. It's got another cross-platform one. So whether you're on Mac or Windows or whatever, it'll run. I don't have anything recently opened. How? Okay. If I pick this one. So, I want to say that this is the one that speedrunners will use when they're like doing randomizers and stuff. So, it's one of those simple to set up ones. You might have to redo your key binds or joypad binds. You can get USB controllers that do have the classic SNES dog bone shape and play it that way too. And that's a really fun option. So we will. So Nintendo 64 has 2 options that I'll recommend. The first is Project 64, which has been a pretty popular emulator for quite a while. And it does have a free branch that you can pick up that doesn't require you to support their Patreon or whatever. And it is a Windows-only emulator, which is kind of a drawback, I think. But it should run pretty well on Wine. They do have an Android build for it now. And PJ64. Okay, so this is his website. It's got, like I said, you can check that out and then be on your way that way. The other one, if I could spell it right, is Mupin64. So this one is a cross-platform one. It's one that I've run for a little bit, and it runs pretty well. It's got a pretty good compatibility across the board for a number of inputs and so on. And most emulators have a variety of input plugins that do a couple different things. So you can support the memory pack and all those things with it. Moopin64 will come up again later, towards the end of this. And not quite finally, but another one of your options is going to be Dolphin, and Dolphin is a GameCube emulator. It does have a compatibility list if you need that as well. So it'll tell you how good those games work, what kind of tweaks you need to do to it. But it runs Wind Waker and a number of games pretty well. Some games will need a little bit more tweaking, but it's a pretty good emulator. It does have a core for the next one that I want to cover is the Libretro kind of ecosystem. And basically what that is it's kind of an ecosystem of multiple emulators so that you can run all of your emulation needs in one space. So you don't have to have all these standalone emulators. You just kind of set one thing up and go from there. And the most common front end that you use for that is called Retroarch. So if I pull this up real quick, because this is one of the things that Retroarch and in general Libretro lets you do. It has a number of controller mappings already set up for many of your favorite emulators and controllers. So it's got like the Xbox One set up, Xbox 360. So now finally, if I open up Retroarch, you see that it already recognizes that I have a controller plugged in. My Steam controller emulating an Xbox 360 controller. But what this lets you do is have your whole ROM library in one place and be able to browse and play it from here, including music and a number of other things, but it's not part of this. It does resemble that of like your PlayStation menus. So you can configure that in like the configuration. User interface, appearance, lets you do a number of things, change the theme and so on, so you can have that if you really want it. Change it to eyesore levels, but it does support retro achievements, so if you're one of those that's an achievement hunter, there's a site for achievements. Otherwise, it lets you it'll scan your saves or what all and give you achievements for different things that you accomplish in your games, classic games, much like now. So let's see. So like I said, one of the things that it does is it has a core system. So these are basically like emulators built to work inside of Retroarch or its many instances. So you've got like all kinds of systems. So if we go back to Online Updater, if you go into Core Updater, you can see that you can install a whole slew of different emulators just from here. So like I talked about, the SNES, it's got a number of cores for that. You've got the Commodores, Doom, let's see, FFmpeg for videos, Mednafen is another sort of like multi-emulator, PC Engine, for those of you that played that, 3DS, Citra has a core, so that's your deal. Melon DS, I want to say, is a more accurate emulator than Desmume now, but I'm not sure. So Game Boy Color, like I talked about, we've got Sameboy in here, Gambatte, and a number of others. mGBA is here as well, along with VBA in a couple iterations. Now Dolphin is another one, and I've used that a couple times in here. It's even got your source ports for Quake and Doom though, so I can just sift through this and just keeps going. So if I go over, so you see I already have a few games put up. It's got previews and crap. Run. So it kind of gives you the everything. Come on, buddy. So we can run around and do crap now. Runs pretty well when I'm recording, actually. Yes, I understood all that, thank you. Got it, rendering. Come on. So yeah. So default key to bring up this menu is F1. And so it'll let you save states and do all that kind of stuff. You can... Oh. Okay. So if you accidentally exit out of the quick menu, you can always go back to it, just like I just did right there. Supports streaming. Okay. You go into options here, you can set up a configuration for a specific game or for a specific core as well. So you can change how it's processing things and everything else. And then if you are playing on mobile, you can mess with the on-screen stuff. You can mess with the controls for a specific game. So if you find the way a game plays uncomfortable, you can actually set it up differently. So for like 007 for the Nintendo 64, you can set it up to have the modern control scheme, like we're all used to. Let me close that out. Can I move my mouse now? Yes. Okay. So, talked a little bit about theming. So if we go back to let me try to remember where that is. Oh, file browser. No. So drivers, it's kind of like set everything. It decides what does what. You've got MIDI, across the board, video, and sound. If you want to change those. Where is it? Oh, the menu one changes a type of menu. So this is the XMB one. I don't think you'll want to mess with that though. So where did that? Oh, in the directory? Okay, yes. So here in the directories bit, you can set up your different paths. So if you've got a dedicated ROMs folder, if I can find it. Downloads. Okay, so file browser. You can set that up so if you have to browse for a specific ROM or for a ROM hack, it'll go to your ROMs folder by default and start from there, and then you can explore from there rather than having to go through your whole system tree to find it. And then it's got like a whole bunch of settings for like your save files, so you can set it to the place where the ROM is or otherwise. Screenshots. Bleh. See, that's user settings. I won't enter that. Playlist. There's your achievements. So if you need to turn that on, it tells you how to do that right there. And then, so here's your history. You can see that I've played a couple things already. Those previews when it's applicable. So, if you wanted to add a list of ROMs to it, like you see I have the list here, all you would need to do is you could scan individual files, so you could go through, it would start like this, And you could scan, let's say, I have these scanned in? I don't think I do. Go with that one. So you see the pop-up comes up. And it says it scanned it. So it adds it to my library. So I've got that. Did it not recognize that? It might not have. But if it recognizes it as a ROM, or the checksum or whatever, then it adds it to your library. So if I go to black, it'll add it to your library under the game. So the other way you can do that is you can scan the directory, scan this directory, so it goes through and scans everything in there for you, and adds it to the list. So it can take a while if you've got a large library. And then finally, it might double add everything too if you already had a list of everything in it, just to warn you. And one important thing when you're scanning the directory is make sure that you have a core installed for that respective ROM type, because otherwise it won't add it to your library. That's how it kind of uses those file associations to recognize what is what. I don't think I've played... Okay. So one last thing, when you're running a ROM, what you can do is you can go in, select the ROM from your library, and you hit run. It'll ask you what emulator generally for the first time run. So it associates that ROM with that core. So if you've got like a core ROM that works better with a different core emulator, then it'll set those associations up. You'll run it, and then it'll come up like that. And it continues to do its thing in the bottom there. So I can play Harvest Moon like this. So I can close that out. So let's say that you don't have, or your ROM didn't load up. So you can hit load content. We can go into, that's the file browser settings. Start directory. So start directory will bring you to your base folder. So if I wanted to, let's go with this one. So it'll recognize the ROM, and you can pick which one. mGBA. So most Game Boy Advance emulators will associate Game Boy Color ROMs with it. So if there are those compatibility things, it'll automatically do that for you. So I can select gambatte here. So, and it'll run like that just fine. So a lot of people find Retroarch difficult because of the configuration, and it's like they don't find it very coherent. But as you kind of dig through like the input and set things up, Retroarch kind of has that controller paradigm set up between whatever you're using for controls and the emulator itself. So you can map Retroarch to certain things and then have your other binds otherwise. But that is everything for this. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, leave a like, leave a comment if you think I didn't do something well that I could have done better, or you can join the Discord. You can join the Zexie Discord as well. That'll be down in the description, so that you can get together with other gamers and so on like that. And if you find what I do helpful, you can support me on Patreon, Subscribestar, and those other places. And I will see you all later.